And when we think about something as simple as hearing me talk today, if you speak English, then you can easily understand me. But if you're probably watching this on YouTube or some tool in some other country, you might be translating me. Under the hood for translation, one of the biggest companies in the world that's been doing this for a long time is now here in the States to have a conversation.
Welcome to GenAI Talks.
Ben, can you introduce yourself and the company you're with?
Yes, my name is Ben Morse. I work for DeepL. I've been there since November. We are a language translation AI company, as you were saying, and started in 2017, based in Germany. One of maybe the biggest AI company in Europe. Maybe not, I shouldn't probably say that.
Can you speak to how important or how empowering translation is for communities?
He says some really important things about humanity, what makes us human. I was thinking about something unrelated to your second question at all. Humanity, what makes us human, we do have the ability to use language. And people think maybe sometimes dogs can. You watch videos where they have dogs tap various things and they say, outside, dog, now. Mm-hmm. Can they actually put sentences together like that? Probably not, maybe not. Dolphins maybe have some language, but humans, we have certain things in context, certain things in common. We have words, obviously, sounds, syntax that puts things together, grammar, and these things go across cultures. It's a fascinating area because if you talk to people in various parts of the world, you're speaking in Chinese, you're speaking in English, you're speaking in Bulgarian, there's different ways language is created, but our brains understand these things. Initial machine language tools couldn't really do these things. You could look up what words were, you could have rules about grammar, but you can get a sense of the language, a feel for the language. And more as models get bigger and better, especially as LLMs come into play, and they know common ways to phrase things, it can become more and more idiomatic. DeepL's worked pretty hard at this. Whatever DeepL does, many linguists will review the corpus of translations DeepL is creating and make notes on it. This gets sent back between the models to make them better. So as the models get better and people work on these things more and more, they become more and more idiomatic, which is kind of crazy when it says things like, it's raining cats and dogs. Maybe in Japanese they wouldn't use that phrase at all, I'm sure they wouldn't. But it's pretty good translating to a similar phrase that feels like it's local, but really there's a lot of nuance to language.
If we go even further with that, the idea of even a simple word has different meaning based on context. So for everyone that comes from my line of life, coming from St. Louis, Missouri, shout out to all my St. Louis folk. If I say the term tight, this is tight, that's tight. If I'm coming from my background, tight can mean really cool, that's really good. But if I say this is tight and you're not from that background, you might think, okay, is it restricting?
It's a tight sweater.
Yeah, so that sweater is not good. It's a bad sweater, but no, tight is good. Even the word bad, it has different meanings in different contexts. Can you speak a little bit how is that? It seems like a really hard problem to solve. How is that problem, handled or managed of the importance of context or even the simplest word or phrase meaning?
Yeah, I'm not a linguist who specializes in these things, but it's a great point. When I first worked in language stuff many years ago, people were impressed by things for example, if you had to do text-to-speech, you had a phrase ST period James, ST period, you could use rules to say, okay, this actually is St. James Street, or maybe St. Louis Street, not Street Louis Saint, because you know the context. It's before or after a proper noun. They've got much better than that now, of course, and mostly it comes from just the magic of LLMs, that there's a large corpus of data, and it grasps this data at a large level, and it knows what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, what's more likely to occur, not likely to occur. But your example is a very good one, especially because the word tight, you can use it in the wrong context. If I know that tight means that's really tight, I might say, that sweater's really tight, you might say, wait, is it actually tight, or is it tight? And then in 10 years, or even in 5 years, it might sound outdated. Slang bad, or slang that's groovy. Yeah. It sound hopelessly outdated, but 50 years ago, or among the right people, even today, it would sound really cool.
What's one thing maybe you share to people that's they might not know of that's happening, that's really important or very valuable?
What's happening with language translation now and using it. One interesting thing about language translation, in the actual world, is it's harder than language translation. I could talk about this actually today, that you're translating language. If you give me a bunch of strings, and I'm DeepL's API, for example, I can translate those strings. You have or you have a document full of stuff, I can return this to you as a document in a different language. That's kind of a problem which has been solved to a large extent. But what's harder is the actual world around translation, because let's say I'm working on that UI over there, and I want to get 45 different strings in the UI translated from English to other languages. There's a lot of process involved around that. And making all that process actually happen takes a lot of work. I mean, there's words in German, for example, like Schadenfreude that people use in English sometimes, or Angst. They don't have quite an equivalent in English. And there's similar words in English that don't have in other languages. And English has like 40 words for the word big, for example, enormous, gigantic, humongous. So you can't always translate those kinds of nuances with a single word to other languages. I think you're going to start seeing happening, well, we'll see what happens actually. As models get bigger, they may just get better at this kind of stuff. Like someone asked me yesterday about translating poetry. I was saying, if you can translate like a poem where every word is super important and full of meaning, they could also have to rhyme in certain ways or have other kinds of like tricks like alliteration or scanning. You have to change all those words to make it make sense in a different language.
Imagine if I go see a movie. Movies that done really well have jokes and, idioms, things that I get from the movie that I know in my time period, in my cultural lineage. If I'm in another culture, though, I might not know those things. Imagine if I could rewrite dynamically what people are saying. So instead of like making a joke about, what happened in the United States at a certain time period, it has a similar like joke.
Like this happened over here, like in Turkey, or like in Mongolia, reference this thing over here, or this pop culture star. It's similar to like Britney Spears or something, Miley Cyrus, but this is in a different country. That'd be impressive and probably possible because you probably can translate like concepts at a bigger level from here to here, or ideas, if your LM is smart enough and gets these kinds of concepts. And actually, speaking of jokes are a big challenge because often jokes rely on surprise or puns. Actually, I've been doing a workshop at MCPs recently. MCP workshop I do, we build a joke server. The challenge there usually is with voice to voice is that if you're speaking, you don't have the whole sentence, you have to translate. And for example, you're speaking in German, often the verbs are at the end of the sentence. You have to actually guess what the verbs are in the middle of the sentence, which you can usually do pretty well thanks to the magic of predictions and models, but not always. So there are challenges with that, but I think we're going to pretty soon see actual like voice-to-voice translation being much better. So you can call somebody or be at a phone support call and you can start talking to someone in a different language and they'll hear, their own language at some point. That should be happening soon. But as far as like 5, 10 years, actually, what do you think is going to happen?
My bold prediction is we're going to see the death of the internet as we know it.
That's a fascinating idea. And I can say the web is challenged because you might have worse web content or if like everything being summarized by like AI anyway. Why create web pages in the first place? Why make Wikipedia, other web pages? If you can generate things that sort of are almost as good just as quickly, but there are just other stuff repurposed. The idea of the entire end of social media, though, is pretty interesting. Social media, I think, is kind of a problem these days. It won't last forever the way it is now. You might even see more stuff that's just like generated by agents. You might just be more like, I'm going to get on and talk to some interesting AI bot. But talking to your friends will still be important in some way, but maybe they'll be overwhelmed by other things. Like, for example, I'm picking something different now, but just as like social media was like this empowering thing and soon it became overwhelmed with like trolls and bots, people manipulating it in various ways. MCP servers, for example, are a new thing and they're kind of pure and nice, but people are going to make ones that are exploitative or trying to, divert traffic to the wrong places or steal your data. So people tend to take these things, these nice things, and use them in strange ways.
It's humanity.
Yeah, people will find these exploits out there. So maybe social media will change completely. I mean, I'm sure it will eventually. It's just a question, I guess, of when.
I appreciate you coming with me, Ben. This has been a phenomenal chat. Last word from you. What do you want people to know and how people stay in touch with you?
What people should know, just keep learning things. It's not as hard as you think. AI is intimidating, but in fact, if you get out there and just try stuff and learn things, tech is still just tech. You can still use these things. And find me on LinkedIn, find me on social media as long as it still exists, and just say hello and introduce yourself and say what you're doing.
That said, ladies and gentlemen, we've just concluded a phenomenal talk that you cannot avoid. Language is institutional, it's foundational, and it's spiritual. Thank you, Ben, for bringing this together and having this conversation.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Honored.
Big ideas, real tools, bold moves. That's what GenAI Talks is all about. Don't miss what's next. Subscribe and explore more in our GenAI community.